The laughter reached me before she did. I heard it roll up from the low benches of the trial ground the way wind comes off the fens. First a few voices, then the whole more catching it, that ugly music a crowd makes when it has found something small to stand on. I was seated where the king is meant to sit, on the flat gray stone they call the watch seat, with the oak ring of elderfin black against a sky going bruise purple with dusk. And I had come, as I came every third autumn, to watch the young of the Moor packs step into the ring and call their wolves up out of their blood. It is the oldest rite we keep. A child of the packs turns 17, and on the first full moon after they walk into the trodden circle inside the oaks, and before the whole assembly they shift, they let the wolf rise through the skin, prove the beast that lives in them and take their place as full-blooded of the Moor. Those who rise clean are cheered and named. It is a joyful thing most years. Mothers weep. Old men who have seen 60 trials still weep. But every rite has its cruelty, and ours is this. Not every child rises. Some stand in the circle and shake and strain and nothing answers. We call them beast-blind or wolfless, though the truer word is only unlucky, and those who fail are turned quietly to the work that keeps a hold running. The kennels, the middens, the salt sheds, the drudgery no full wolf will stoop to. It is not death, but among a people who measure worth by the wolf a person carries, it is a kind of death, and everyone in that circle knows it. I say all this so you will understand what the laughter meant. They had put a girl into the ring who had already failed it. I knew her by sight the way a king knows the furniture of his own hall, which is to say, not at all and completely. She was the kennel girl. She had been the kennel girl for as long as I had held the moor, and before that too, I think. When my hounds whelped in the cold months, it was her hands the bitches trusted. When a lame courser needed a poultice no groom would waste time on, she was the one I would find in the straw at midnight, patient as stone. I had passed her 100 times and never once spoken to her, because a king does not speak to the kennel girl, and because, I will be honest, for this story earns nothing if I am not, I had never thought to look. Her name, I would learn, was Nessa. They had dragged her up from the kennels in her working clothes, straw still in the hem of her skirt, and shoved her into the circle where the 17-year-olds waited trembling for their moon, and the joke wrote itself and the more laughed, because she was not 17. She was a grown woman, 25 if she was a day, and everyone present knew she had walked this ring years ago and stood in it silent while nothing rose, and been sent to the straw ever since. To make her stand in it again, a beast-blind drudge among frightened children, was a fine cruel sport, and it was Gorse who had arranged it. Gorse was my trial master. He had a jaw like a spade and a talent for the small humiliations that keep a frightened man feeling large, and he stood now at the circle's edge with his thumbs in his belt, grinning up at me as if he had brought me a gift. "A jest for the king's night," he called, and the benches roared. "The kennel bitch wants her wolf after all. Shall we let her try again?" I should have stopped it then. I want that written plainly. I sat on the watch seat and I did not stop it, because I was tired in the marrow, the way I had been tired for years, since the last of my council had finally stopped bringing me daughters of good blood to look over like brood mares, since I had made my peace, cold and final, with the truth that I would rule the moor to my grave with no mate beside me and no true heir behind me. A king who has given up on the one thing he was told his whole life he would find grows a callous over the place where mercy used to be quick. I let the joke run, because stopping it would have cost me a feeling I no longer had the strength to spend. So I watched her. I expected her to run. That is what the beast-blind do when the moor turns on them. They lower their heads and take the shortest line out of the light, and the crowd's laughter follows them like dogs, and it is over. I have seen it a dozen times and never thought about it once. Nessa did not run. She stood in the center of the trodden circle with the straw in her hem and her hands loose at her sides, and she lifted her head, and she looked not up at me, not at Gorse, Not at anyone in particular, she looked at the oaks, at the black gaps between them where the sky was going dark, the way a person looks who is waiting for something they have waited a long time to see. And she let them laugh. There is a kind of dignity that laughter cannot reach, and I had spent my whole life among warriors and had seen it perhaps 3 times, always in men about to die well. To see it in a kennel girl standing in straw stopped the breath in my chest. Beside her, one of the true 17-year-olds, a lanky boy, terrified, waiting his own turn, edged away from her as though her bad luck might be catching. And a young woman at the circle's edge, highborn, ringed by her friends, laughed the loudest of them all. That was Sella of the Fenwold line, whose father had spent 2 years pushing her toward my watch seat like a coin across a table, and whose ambition had curdled into spite the day I made it clear, without a word, that no, she had wanted to be Luna of the Moor. Denied it, she had made a small dark hobby of reminding everyone lower than herself of exactly how low they stood, and there was no one lower, in Sella's accounting, than the girl in the straw. "Look at her," Sella said, loud enough to carry, sweet enough to sting. "She thinks the moon will bother tonight. It didn't come for her at 17. Why would it come for a scrubber of kennels now?" She turned to the benches, playing them like a harp. "Go on, kennel girl, show the king your wolf." And Nessa turned her head at last and looked at Sella, one long level look, without anger in it, which is somehow worse than anger, and said, in a voice pitched low but perfectly clear across the whole silent ring, "I never said I had none. You said that, all of you. I only ever kept quiet and let you." It was not a defense. It was not a plea. It was the flattest, simplest correction, the kind you give a child who has gotten a fact wrong, and it landed in that circle like a stone in still water. The laughter faltered. Sella's mouth opened and found nothing in it, and Gorse, sensing the crowd slipping, barked out fast and hard. "Then rise, girl, or get out of the ring. The moon's up. The children are waiting. We've a real trial to run." He was right about one thing. The moon was up. It had crested the eastern oaks while she spoke, the full moon of the turning year, the one we call the true moon, fat and low and the color of old bone, and its light came down through the black branches and laid itself across the trodden circle, and across her. And I remember the exact moment it touched her, because that was the moment the old wound woke. I should explain the wound, because it is the whole hinge of my life, and I have never told it to anyone. 19 years before that night, in the border war that made me king, a spear took me under the last rib and did not come clean. The barb sheared inside the muscle, and our field healer, a good man, could not get all of it, and the wound closed over what he left behind. It healed wrong. For 19 years it had ached, not a wound ache, a deeper thing, a low steady wrongness under the ribs, like a note held too long, so constant that I had stopped calling it pain and started calling it me. Every healer of the moor had laid hands on it. None could reach it. I had ruled 19 years with a hot iron nail buried in my side, and had made my peace with that too, as I made my peace with everything, by deciding it was simply the shape of my life. When the true moon touched Nessa, the ache went quiet. I do not mean it eased. I mean it stopped all at once, the held note finally released, and the absence of it was so sudden and so total that I came half out of the watch seat with a hand pressed to my side, gasping, as a man gasps coming up out of deep water. 19 years. Gone between one breath and the next, and in the silence where the pain had lived my whole reign, something else moved, something that had been waiting under it the whole time, patient as she was patient, and it turned toward the girl in the ring the way a compass turns north, without choosing to, because it cannot do otherwise. I knew then, before her wolf rose, before any proof at all, I knew the way you know your own name, the way you know the ground is under you. 19 years of ache had not been a wound healing wrong. It had been a wound waiting. It had been my body keeping a place open for a thing that had not yet walked into the world where I could find her, and now she had, and the place was hers, and it closed around her and was whole. Down in the circle, Nessa's breath had caught too. I saw her hand come up, not to me. She did not know yet where the pull came from, and press flat against her own breastbone over her heart, and her chin lifted and her eyes went wide. And I understood that whatever had reached across that ring, an unmade 19 years of my pain had reached her in the same instant, and that she was as astonished by it as I was. Two strangers in a crowd of hundreds, struck by the same lightning, each feeling the other for the first time and neither yet daring to believe it. Well, Gorse sneered, oblivious, seeing only a kennel girl standing frozen with a hand on her chest. Nothing, same as before. Get her out, she's holding up the... Be quiet. I did not shout it. I have found across a long reign that the quietest command is the one no one dares question, and mine dropped into that noisy ring and shut it like a door. Every face turned up to the watch seat. Gorse's grin died. Sella went still. Let her stand, I said. Let her have the moon. Gorse blinked up at me, and I saw the calculation cross his spade of a face. The king has a whim, humor it, it costs nothing. The joke will only be richer when she fails again in front of him. As the king wills, he said, and stepped back with a mocking half-bow toward the girl, ceding her the circle. The moon's all yours, kennel girl. Try not to keep his majesty waiting. And the Moor settled in to watch her fail. I have thought many times since about what those next few minutes cost her. To stand in the full light of a moon she had been told for 8 years had refused her, under the eyes of a people who had already written the ending, and simply be still and let it happen. There is a courage that swings a sword, and there is a courage that only stands, and I have come to believe the second is the rarer. Because at first nothing happened, and the crowd began, low and mean, to laugh again. Then Nessa closed her eyes. I want to tell this part exactly, because I was closer to it than any soul present, and I will carry it to my grave. She closed her eyes and she stopped straining. That was the thing, she stopped trying to make it come. Every child in that ring shifts by wanting it so hard their whole body shakes. That is how we are taught, that the wolf is wrestled up by force of will. Nessa did the opposite. She let her shoulders drop. She turned her face up into the moonlight and she opened her hands at her sides, palms out, like a woman standing in the first rain after a long drought, and she quit fighting the thing she had been fighting her whole life, and she let it rise. And it rose. The light changed first. Before her body changed at all, the moonlight on her began to gather, I have no better word, to pool and thicken, and take on a shine that the moon alone could not have made. A cool silver luminance that welled up out of her skin as if she had swallowed the moon years ago and only now let it out. The oldest of the elders on the benches, a blind grandmother of the Ashfell line who had come to trials for 70 years, rose to her feet with her clouded eyes wide, and I heard her say, in a cracked whisper that carried in the new and total silence, "Silver. It's silver. Great Mother, I never thought to live." And then Nessa shifted. It was not the wrenching, effortful thing our children do. It was like watching a cloud take the shape it had always meant to have. She flowed from woman to wolf the way water finds its level, and where she had stood there was a wolf out of the oldest stories our grandmothers frighten and comfort us with, tall at the shoulder as a yearling stag, deep-chested and silver. Not gray, silver. Her coat threw back the moonlight like struck metal, like frost on iron, and along her spine and around her great calm eyes the light gathered brightest, so that she seemed lit from within, a wolf made half of moor and half of moon. I came the rest of the way out of the watch seat and stood. I could not have stayed sitting if the ground had commanded it. Because I knew what she was. Every full blood in that ring knew, in the way we know the things our line half remembers in its marrow. The silver moon wolves, the moon-born. The founding line of the moor itself. The wolves the first kings of Elderfin were said to have descended from, gone from the world 400 years and more, hunted to the last in the old wars until they lived only in the songs the elders sang and the carvings on the oldest stones. A bloodline the Moor had mourned for 4 centuries and laid to rest as legend. standing in my trial circle, in straw, come up out of my kennels. The silver wolf turned her great head, slow and unhurried, and looked at the benches full of people who had laughed. She did not snarl. She did not need to. She only looked, and rank by rank the laughter died in their throats, and I watched the oldest and truest instinct of our kind move through that assembly like wind through barley. The pull to bow before the blood we all came from, and one by one, then in rows, then all at once, the Moor of Elderfin went down on its knees in the moonlight before the kennel girl they had shoved into the ring to break. Gorse went to his knees because everyone around him did, and he did not understand why and was afraid not to. Sella went down last and hardest, her fine face gone the color of ash, because she of all of them had staked her worth on being higher than this girl, and the ground had just opened under everything she thought she knew. And I came down off the watch seat. A king does not leave the watch seat during a trial. It is not done. It has not been done in living memory. I came down the worn stone steps into the circle, and the silver wolf turned from the kneeling crowd to me, and we stood a few paces apart in the moonlight, king and moonborn, the ache that had defined my whole life gone quiet at last because she was near, and I looked into those calm silver eyes and found, looking back at me, something that had been waiting exactly as long as I had. "I know you," I said. I did not mean to say it aloud. It came out of the quiet place under my ribs where the pain used to be. "I have been aching toward you for 19 years and did not know your name." She shifted back. It was gentler than the rising, the silver flowing down and inward, the light folding away, until it was only Nessa standing there again in her straw-hemmed skirt, breathing hard, her eyes wet and enormous. A woman who had just found out in front of the whole moor that the thing she had kept secret and small her entire life was in truth the oldest and greatest blood the moor had ever carried. She was trembling now, not with fear, I think, but with the sheer size of it. "I didn't lie," she said to me, low, urgent, as if I of all people needed convincing. "At the trial at 17 she did come, my wolf. I felt her rise and her breath caught. I put her back down. I made her go quiet. I was so afraid. My mother told me before she died. She made me swear." "Tell me," I said, and I meant it as a king means a command and heard it come out of me as a man means a plea. And there, in the trodden circle, with the Moor of Elderfin on its knees around us and the true moon standing over the oaks, she told me. Her mother had been the kennel keeper before her, and her mother's mother before that, and back and back. The kennels, the straw, the drudgery, generation on generation. And the Moor had thought it knew why. Beast-blind blood, wolfless stock, good for nothing but the dogs. That was the story the Moor told. It was not the story that was true. The truth was that Nessa's line were the last of the silver moonborn, and they had survived 4 centuries of being hunted for exactly one reason. They had hidden. They had gone down into the kennels of kings, the lowest and least watched work in any hold, and there they had made themselves small and quiet and beneath notice, and they had lived, generation after generation, choking their own wolves down at every trial so that no one would ever see the silver and come, as the old hunters had come, to finish what the wars began. Her mother dying had made her swear to keep it, never rise, never let the silver show. Live small, live safe, live wolfless in the eyes of the Moor, and die in the straw as her mothers had, and let the last of the moonborn go out quietly rather than be hunted out loudly. It was a promise made from love and terror both, and Nessa had kept it for 8 years, standing silent in a ring while the Moor laughed, letting them call her beast blind, because a live drudge was worth more to her mother's memory than a dead legend. "Then why tonight?" I asked her. "Why let her rise tonight of all the nights when they had come to make sport of you?" And Nessa looked at me, really looked, the way she had looked at the oaks while the Moor laughed, as if she saw something the rest of us could not, and she said, "Because the moment I stepped into the ring, something changed. Something I'd never felt, like," she pressed her hand to her breastbone again over the place the pull had struck her, "like there was a reason finally worth being seen for. I didn't understand it, I thought I'd gone mad. But it was stronger than 8 years of being afraid and stronger than the promise, and when the moon touched me, I couldn't put her down again. I didn't want to. Her eyes came up to mine and held. It was you, wasn't it? Whatever it is, it was you. It was you, I said. For 19 years it was you. I told her then, standing in the circle, about the spear and the wound that would not heal and the ache that had lived in me since before she was born, and how it had gone quiet the instant the moon touched her. I am not a man who speaks his heart. I had ruled a hard 19 years by keeping it locked, but I stood in that ring and unlocked all of it, because she had just stood in the same ring and let the whole world see the one thing she had spent her life hiding, and I could do no less. Fair was fair. She had gone first. The old songs say the moonborn and the moorkings were two halves of one thing, I said. That the line of the silver wolves and the line of the crown were made to find each other, moon and moor, and were only ever whole together. I thought it a pretty story for children. I gave up on it years ago. I gave up on ever finding. My voice did a thing it had not done since I was a boy, and I let it. I made my peace with an empty throne. I was wrong to. The peace was a wound too. I only stopped feeling it because I'd had it so long. The moor was still on its knees around us. No one dared move. Somewhere in the dark benches, the blind grandmother of the Ashfell line was weeping the way old people weep at the fulfillment of a thing they had prayed for and never expected to see. I turned from Nessa then to the kneeling crowd, and I found the two faces I wanted. Gorse first, my trial master on his knees in the dirt of his own trial ground, spade jaw gone slack, the man who had dragged a woman out of the kennels to be a jest for the king's night. I did not rage at him. Rage would have honored him. I only looked at him until he could not hold it, and I said, quietly enough that he had to strain to hear, which is the cruelest way to say a thing. You brought me a jest tonight, Gorse. You brought me the last of the moonborn out of my own kennels, where your kind had let her rot for 8 years, calling her beast blind while she carried the oldest blood in the moor. You will remember every day of the rest of your service that the king's true mate was under your hand the whole time and you saw only a girl to laugh at. That is your punishment, not my anger, only the knowing of it. I let that sink into him. You are no longer trial master. You will keep the middens now, and when the young come to their moon each autumn, you will stand at the edge and watch and remember what you almost let the moor lose forever. He made a sound and could not turn it into words. It did not matter. I had already turned from him. Sella was harder to look at, because there was a girl inside the spite who had only ever been taught that her worth was her rank, and I have never enjoyed breaking people, even people who deserve a little breaking. She knelt with her ruined face lifted to me, and she was already, I think, beginning to understand the size of what she had done. She who had built her whole self on standing above the kennel girl, kneeling now to her. You asked her to show me her wolf, I said to Sella. She showed you. What did you learn? She had the grace, or the terror, they look alike in that moment, not to answer with a lie. She looked at Nessa, and her mouth worked, and what came out was small and true and 8 years too late. I'm sorry. Not to me, I said. Sella turned on her knees to the kennel girl she had tormented, and said it again, and meant it that time, and Nessa, this is the part I love most, the part that told me more surely than any silver wolf what she was. Nessa did not gloat, and did not forgive too quickly to make it cheap, but only looked at Sella for a long, steady moment and said, You'll have a long time to prove that. I'm not going anywhere. I've been here the whole time. You just couldn't be bothered to look. Which was, word for word, the thing she might have said to me, and which I deserved to hear as much as Sella did, and which Nessa, being who she was, did not need to say to me twice, because she could see I had already heard it. I took off my cloak. It is a heavy thing. The king's cloak of the moor, gray wolf fur and deep green wool, and the silver clasp of the crown at the throat, old as the oaks, and I lifted it from my own shoulders, and I laid it around hers, the kennel girl in her straw-hemmed skirt, and settled the silver clasp at her throat with my own hands, and the Moor of Elderfin watched their king cloak the drudge they had laughed at in the fur of kings. Nessa of the Moonborn, I said loud now for all of them, last of the silver line, the moon to the moor. I have ruled 19 years with an empty place beside me and did not know your name. I know it now. I will not command this. I have watched you keep quiet under this whole Moor's boot for 8 years rather than be forced into anything, and I will not be one more thing that forces you. So I ask, in front of them all, so it is your choice and freely made, and every door stays open if you say no. I went down, a king, in the trial circle, on one knee in the dirt before the kennel girl, and the Moor made a sound like a held breath let go. Stand beside me, not because the songs say moon and moor were made to be whole. Because I have been aching toward you for 19 years, and I would like, if you'll have me, to spend the rest of them with the aching gone quiet. Will you? She looked down at me for a long moment, wrapped in the fur of kings, the moon in her eyes, and I braced myself. I had meant it, every door open, and if she had turned and walked out of that ring, I would have let her go and counted myself lucky to have felt the ache go quiet even once. She did not walk out. She reached down and took my hand and drew me up, which is not how it is done. The mate does not lift the king, and I loved that she did not know or care, and she said, low, just for me, though the whole Moor strained to hear it. I hid my whole life so I'd be safe. I was safe. I was also alone in the straw, being laughed at, keeping a promise that was really just my mother's fear passed down to me like the kennels were. Tonight I stopped hiding and the sky didn't fall. The Moor knelt. Her hand tightened on mine. I don't want to be safe anymore, Rennick. I've been safe long enough. I want to be seen, a breath, by you. And the ache did not come back. In 19 years it never came back. That is how I knew, past any song, past any silver, past the whole kneeling Moor. The wound my body had kept open for her since before she was born had closed and stayed closed, and I have gone whole every day since. From that trial night to the gray-haired quiet of the years, I am writing this in. We did not run a trial for the 17-year-olds that night. There would be other moons for the children. That moon belonged to the girl from the kennels, and the Moor knew it, and they stayed on their knees until she and I walked out of the circle together, my cloak on her shoulders, and only then did they rise, slowly, changed, a people who had come to laugh at a drudge and would go home having knelt to a legend risen out of their own straw. Sella kept her word in the end over years. I will say that much for her. The sorry proved true, which is rarer than you'd think. Gorse kept the middens and grew, I am told, quieter and less cruel, and stood at the edge of every autumn trial after with a face like a man doing a penance he had come to understand. And the old blind grandmother of the Ashfell line lived 3 more years, and told the tale of the silver wolf rising to every child who would sit still for it, and died, they say, with a smile, having lived to see the thing her whole line had mourned for 400 years walk back into the world in a straw-hemmed skirt. People ask me, now that I am old and Nessa is the Moor's beloved Luna and our children run silver-eyed through the Oak Ring, what I remember most of that night. They expect me to say the wolf, the great silver moonborn rising luminous in the moonlight, the whole Moor going to its knees. It was a sight I will carry past death. I do not diminish it. But it is not what I remember most. What I remember most is the moment before the wolf, before the silver, before any of them knew what she was, when she stood alone in the straw with the whole Moor laughing at her, and she did not run, and she lifted her head, and she looked at the oaks like a woman waiting for a thing she had waited a long, patient life to see. Any drudge could have run. Any legend could have risen. But it took the exact heart she had, the one that could stand in the laughter and stay, to be both at once, and to still, after all of it, have room left over to tell a sorry girl on her knees she'd have a long time to prove herself, and mean it kindly. That is the wolf I knelt to. The silver was only how the Moor finally saw it. We keep one small thing between us, she and I, a private thing, and I will end on it because it is the truest of all of it. On the first full moon of every turning year, the true moon, the one that rose over the oaks that night, we go out alone, No crown, no cloak, no more watching to the empty trial circle, and we stand in the straw where she once stood laughed, at an unseen, and we say nothing at all. We just stand in the moonlight and let it touch us, the king and the kennel girl, moon and more, the ache gone quiet. And every year, when the light finds her and the silver begins to gather in her skin, I put my hand over the old scar under my last rib that has not hurt in all these years, and I feel it stay quiet. And I remember that a wound can be a place kept open in you for a long time, in the dark, for someone you have not met yet. And that the whole hard grief of your life can turn out to have been, all along, only your body faithfully keeping her a place.